Our next speaker, Ernie Barnett from the South Florida Water Management District. Ernie had a lead role in successful passage of the Everglades legislation last year. He joined the South Florida Water Management District in 2005 following a 22-year tenure at the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Ernie Barnett.
Thank you, John, and I'm humbled to be on the stage with Senator Simpson, who championed the Everglades legislation last year, along with Representative Caldwell and Representative Crisafulli and Senator Benaquisto. Just a great show of strength and leadership in the Florida legislature to get this bill passed. Also want to commend and very thankful for the efforts of Governor Rick Scott, who saw the need to seek this change and working with industry, working with the environmental community, and of course working with the leadership in the House and Senate to get the bill passed. But it really does take Everglades restoration forward to a point where we believe this is the final stage of effort to meet the water quality standards in the Everglades. And I'll just to reflect, to give you an idea of the monumental task that we faced a couple of decades ago when the federal courts determined that we needed to develop a very stringent and protective water quality standard. The state of Florida embarked on establishing that standard as part of the Everglades Forever Act, and established that the level of phosphorus entering the Everglades had to be 10 parts per billion. And just to give you an idea of what 10 parts per billion is, if you'll take this half of the room and pretend for a moment you are phosphorus molecules, and you're floating around in a sea of the entire world's population, you are 10 parts per billion. So 70 people compared to 7 billion people is 10 parts per billion, and that is how low the water quality has to get. Many of you have drinking bottled water on your table. An average spring in Florida discharges around 45 to 50 parts per billion. Rainfall can be 7 to 15 to 20 parts per billion, depending on the conditions. So we're tasked with cleaning up water cleaner than rainwater in some instances, so that's a very monumental task, and we believe the legislature has provided us the tools in which we need to get there with. Talked a little bit about the history. This does date back to the original litigation in 1988, and then it was codified and settled and implemented through the Everglades Forever Act. And despite the state's monumental efforts and the efforts of the growers in the Everglades agricultural area, who by implementing best management practices, have reduced the phosphorus coming off of their property by 55%. We've built a massive amount of public works, about $1.6 billion worth of public taxpayer dollar investments. We still weren't quite at the 10 parts per billion, but we were very, very close. In 2012, Governor Scott came in, directed us. The Secretary Vineyard provided great leadership. We went to Washington and we finally reached agreement with EPA what the path forward would be, but we needed this key piece of legislation to actually implement. Talk a little bit about what we've done. We've built 57,000 acres of stormwater treatment areas to treat all of the water under normal conditions flowing into the Everglades. To give you an idea how big that is, one of the larger STAs right in the middle, STA 3-4, it's 17,000 acres. So to put that in perspective, that's about the exact same size as the island of Manhattan. So these are very large constructed wetlands, and we're reducing phosphorus by about 85 to 90% based on prior to the best management practices. Every farmer in the Everglades agricultural area and in the C-139 basin have also, not only have they implemented, as Senator Simpson mentioned, best management practices to reduce their phosphorus runoff, they've also contributed to an agricultural privilege tax on a price per acre basis to help also fund this effort. But how do these things work? These large treatment marshes, they basically mimic nature. Phosphorus flows in between 100 and 150 parts per billion. The plants soak the phosphorus up. They bind the phosphorus in the plant material. When the plants die, they bind the phosphorus and recreate the soil, the peat soils that had built up in the Everglades. As they flow through the treatment process, the submerged aquatic vegetation and the floating vegetation bring it further and further down. And we've been averaging in the very low teens in some of our STAs, STA 3-4 I mentioned, for the life of its, since 2003, has been averaging 17 parts per billion. So we are very, very, very close to that target. Very busy graph, but the main thing to show you is those blue bars are all the phosphorus that flows into all of our STAs. And the red bars are what flows out the other end. And we could not perform this well if the farmers weren't implementing their BMPs, but the public works that are in place have really, really done an amazing job. The black line that you see are the flows. So you'll recall living in the state of Florida in 2004 and 2005, the hurricane years that hit. Look at all that flow that flowed into the STAs, and they still performed remarkably well by reducing the vast majority of the phosphorus. So we knew we needed to do more. Oops, I got a little ahead of myself. One of the things that we found is that these things are just like any kind of treatment system. If you can moderate the flow through the STA, they're going to perform better. So one of the innovative things that Senator Simpson's bill does is it allows us to build these large reservoirs just upstream from the STAs that will capture those flows to keep our STAs from drying out in the dry season and not getting overrun by flow in the wet season. So here's what the governor's plan does. I'm going to walk you through sequentially over time which projects get built. We conveniently divided the Everglades into 3 flow paths, eastern, western, and central. And in the eastern flow path, we're building one of those large flow equalization basins, can store 45,000 acre-feet of water. It can capture most all of the wet season flows that come down from this western flow path before it then would then be metered in a slow rate into the STA 1 East and 1 West complex. In the central, and we're also going to add 2 additional STAs to optimize the sizes to the amount of flow. And we've made great progress on those features. In the central flow path, another one of these flow equalization basins to moderate the flows into the STAs. And then on the western side, we're also adding some additional treatment within our STA and then another flow equalization basin. So these features are also augmented by some additional restoration projects that we're doing and also some sub-regional source controls working with farmers in some of the areas that have slightly higher elevations of phosphorus that flow off of their properties. I'm not going to go into all this. Senator Simpson talked about it. The key thing that the legislature did, I believe, is ratify the governor's proposal and codify it into law and provide a dedicated funding stream for the next 11 years. We developed, through what we believe our governing board's direction and working closely with the Secretary, a very fiscally responsible approach to this. We relied heavily on the reserves that we had set aside for this purpose, pays for about 1/3 of it. The district is going to, without a tax increase, capture a small amount of ad valorem tax growth from new construction in the district over time. And then that supplemented with $32 million from the legislature constitutes 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 equals the $880 million over time to do this. The farmers also stepped up and agreed to extend their tax that had been imposed by the 1994 Act that was set to decrease in 2016. They extended effectively another 20 years till 2035. And by doing so, they're contributing going forward with the solution as well. So we think that having the funding in place, the plan in place, and the engineering and technical expertise to do this, we feel very confident we will achieve the long-term target of having 10 parts per billion water in the Everglades. Project status made great progress on all of these individual features. The main point of this slide is the task that we've been given has a very ambitious work schedule, but working closely with the department and with the EPA and our federal partners, we continue to stay on track and move ahead. So in closing, just once again, the deepest gratitude as a long-term public servant working on Everglades to see the great step forward that the Florida legislature, through their leadership and through the strong support of Governor Scott, provided the tools that we need at the South Florida Water Management District to ultimately achieve the very protective numeric nutrient criterion for the Everglades. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie. I think you know the drill by now. Any questions? Please give them to Teresa or Melissa. No questions? Ernie, would you like to ask the senator a question? Or Senator, would you like to ask Ernie a question? Yeah.
I'm not sure boy or girl. I think I'm going with girl, but I don't know.
I have a brand new grandson, 11 months old this week, so that's my first. That's great. I know the feeling. So for everybody out here who are not quite grandparents yet, you have something to look forward to, and everybody out here who are, you know what we're talking about, so it's great. There are none, so with that, let's give the speakers a round of applause and thank them.